Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the way the political heat is inevitably rising over Labour's decision to make winter fuel payments for pensioners means tested rather than universal. I'll be discussing the policy from the point of view of whether it's good or not in terms of how it works in practice, whether it's sensible or not politically, because that's a different thing, but also how I think Labour could make the situation much better with slightly different messaging here. So let's consider the policy first of all, then the politics. So the Tories are arguing, oh, it's terrible policy. Old people might be at risk this winter. Now, they don't care about that. They allowed energy bills to rise while oil and energy companies made record profits in recent years. And I also remember the story of the old lady on the bus a few years ago. Boris Johnson, who's Prime Minister at the time, was being asked about this elderly lady who would ride the bus all day in winter because it was warm. She didn't like the sights and sounds. It was a warm place. She couldn't afford to heat her own home. And Boris Johnson was delighted at this. It was marvellous because he saw it as an opportunity to say, oh, the fact that she can ride the bus all day long for free is because of a pass that I introduced, he said. Completely missing the fact she didn't want to ride the bus all day long. She wanted to be at home, warm. But she couldn't afford the energy. So any notion that the Tories really care about people being able to afford energy should be called out there. But for most of us, I think we're okay with benefits being means tested. The real issue is, where do you set the level? For example, few would argue that the lady who was riding the bus should have had the payment taken away. In fact, it clearly needs increasing. And this is where some of Labour's messaging, I think, should be different, because they're allowing the media just to talk about the winter fuel payments being taken away, which is exclusively what they're talking about. When, for a significant number, it's a minority, but for quite a lot of people still, it's actually going up. And it's going up in two ways. First, qualifying pensioners who are 80 years or older will have their winter fueling payments increased, the payments increased by 50%. Why aren't Labour pushing this more? Why aren't they making the point that what they're doing really is moving money around? They're taking it from those who don't need it in order to put it into places to help people who do. Instead, what they're doing is they're putting the blame for everything they're going to announce in this coming budget entirely on the Tory financial black hole. The second way it's going up harks back to what I originally said when it was announced, when I first talked about this. The problem with going from universal to means tested is there will be some people who will qualify, but they don't show up on the government list, so they won't get it because they don't know they qualify and they haven't told the government. They haven't applied. It's known that there are actually quite a lot of pensioners who should be getting pension credit, but are not claiming it. Now, I said at the time, the government should make a real push to raise awareness and get these people to apply. I'm happy to see that they are doing that. Hopefully it will be effective, but there is now a government push to contact as many people as possible and say, you might qualify for this. Can you apply, please? And for those who do now, as a result of this government push, get the pension credit where, they're not at the moment, they'll not only retain the winter fuel payments, they're actually going to get extra from the pension credit. So their income this winter will go up. So in two ways, Labour are actually going to be boosting the income of some of the most vulnerable pensioners this winter. Why aren't they pushing that every time they talk about it? I mean, sure, by all means say, oh, you Tory black hole, but we're also doing this as well. Are you asking us to take that away? Instead, they're just obsessed with making the point that their unpopular budget decisions this year are the result of this smoking heat the Tories left the country. It's like, yes, Labour should make that point, but you can make other points as well. It's possible to say more than one thing about the upcoming budget. Because most people will be fine with the payment being means tested as long as you get the level right. I think we all agreed the bus lady should get it. But like Theresa May, for example, she's a multimillionaire. She would receive it under the Tory system. Well, she clearly doesn't need it. But those are extreme examples. Where do you set that level in between the two? Well, in a way, it's simple and difficult. It's simple in that the level, I think, in my opinion, should be based on two criteria. So the first is there a pensioner whose home temperature is below the level at which it presents a risk to health? And the reason for that is they can't afford to have the heating on. That pensioner should get the payment. So then there's the second one. So let's say they are heating their home Okay, so they're heating the home. The temperature is now at a point where they're not risking their safety. But in order to do that, they're doing without other essentials like food to pay for it. Well, then they should get the payment as well, because although they are prioritising that heating, there are other things that are also important to their health that they're doing without, right? Anyone who can afford to heat their home to a safe temperature and can still afford the other basic living standards doesn't need it. So in my opinion, that is simple enough. The difficulty is identifying those people for whom those criteria apply, because there's no official government lists of them, right? Simply being in receipt of pension credit, I don't think does it. And it's not just my opinion. Lots of people who are actual experts think so. After all, the level of pension credit was set by the Tories. It's hardly likely to be generous. And my view is it's better to let some pensioners get the benefit who don't really need it than have any not get it who do. And I said before, Martin Lewis has already advised the government, well, if they're listening, I assume they are, give it to people in housing bands A to D, even if they don't get pension credit, just as a way of making sure. Now, I would say that sounds sensible, because this is where we get into the politics. So this is what is in, for those familiar with Yes Minister speak, is a brave policy. Taking money from pensioners, one of the most important voting groups in the country, seems politically interesting. It's not even like it saves all that much. Like if you were going to, with this one policy, save the £20 billion they need to fill in the hole, it'd be like, okay, it's probably worth it. But for what might only be about £1 billion, it's like, not sure here. Now, that being said, it's not an insane policy politically for Labour. Would be for the Tories. Oh yeah, they shouldn't touch it with a barge pole. Their opposition to this move, it's not real opposition. It's political for them. Labour's target voters are not these pensioners. It's people in their 40s and 50s. And they're unaffected by it. In fact, if Labour would just explain how this policy has wider benefits, could be positive policy for them. And of the elderly people who do vote Labour, many will be on the lower income end. And so quite a number of those will be retaining the payments anyway. And as I say, some of them, a good chunk, could even see their income go up this winter as a result of these changes. Why aren't Labour emphasising that instead of wagging their fingers at the Tories all the time? I mean, it's possible to wag your fingers at the Tories and say, by the way, we're actually boosting the incomes of these vulnerable people as well. Politically speaking, there are two main hazards for Labour here, though. The first is from their own MPs. I think that's because the leadership's not getting its message right. Like, the message is all negative and none of the positives. And there are positives they could push. And I think because of that, maybe Labour MPs are struggling, because they will no doubt be getting messages from elderly constituents concerned about it. So they have to respond back what they're going to respond back with. In the absence of the positive spin, many presumably are having to say that, well, you know, we're talking to Treasury colleagues about getting the level right, or maybe even U-turn on the policy altogether. Now, being clear, there won't be a U-turn. The Tory media are trying very hard, but there won't be one, because that would be mad. If Reeves were not certain that this was the right move, she would not have announced it when the amount saved is relatively small. Because if she U-turned on it now, it makes it look like she doesn't know what she's doing, right? So she will have already made absolutely 100% certain it's a sort of policy that, yes, might be unpopular with some of Labour's voters now, but the overall picture for them will have improved come the next election. The political danger is that a significant number of Labour MPs don't see it that way and end up voting against their own budget. That will be deeply embarrassing to the new government. I mean, it won't fail. I don't think we're in that serious danger, but even a sizable rebellion against it is embarrassing. The second political danger, which is rather more serious, is the media. Every year, thousands of elderly people die in cold homes. Thousands. All the media need to do is find one who did so after having the winter fuel payment taken away, and it'll be all over the headlines for weeks. I wouldn't put it past some outlets to do this without even bothering to check if the person who died got the payment or not. Now, that's the danger, that Labour are accused of killing people with the policy. It's why it's incredibly important they get that level right. And it's better to err on the side of some getting it who don't need it than any losing it who do. Because there will be thousands of elderly people die this winter because their home is too cold. It happens every winter. It's happened in the last winters when people were getting, when it was universal. It should have been a source of national shame that thousands of people every year are dying in a home because it's too cold. That should have been a national scandal before now. But the media never bothered to make anything of it because why? Tories in power. But they will this winter. So Labour need to be able to do two things in order to avoid a political pitfall here. First, they have to make sure that everyone who is vulnerable gets the payment, even if it means letting some who aren't vulnerable retain it. Wouldn't cost much just to play it safe as far as I can tell. And Labour have to get their messaging right. Yes, it's important to keep beating the Tories up over the mess they've left of things, and they're going to keep doing that, and they should do that. But it's important to emphasise how Labour are not just dealing with the mess, but actually helping people as well. Some pensioners are going to get higher payments this winter. Labour should be every time someone asks them about this policy, they should be crowbarring that into the answer. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.